In addition, you mentioned just a few minutes ago also the importance of investment and not just aid. Mm-hmm. What's the balance between assistance and investment? Most businesses get a bigger return on their investment in Africa than any other part of the world. So should that receive more emphasis than it's been getting? What kind of balance in your mind exists between development assistance and...
Well, a couple of points I would make. Number one, you're not going to get investment without good governance. So that's part of the reason why we emphasize it. Again, this is a very practical, hard-headed approach to how we're going to see improvements in the daily lives of the peoples of Africa. If government officials are asking for 10, 15, 25% off the top, businesses don't want to invest there. That's point number one. Point number two, I think that when my father left Kenya and traveled to the United States back in the early 60s, the GDP of Kenya and South Korea weren't equivalent. Kenya's was actually higher. So what's happened over that 50-year period? What you've seen is Korea combine foreign investment, integration with the global economy, with a strategic sense of certain industries that they can promote for export, great emphasis on education for a skilled workforce, insisting that foreign investment is accompanied by technology transfer so that homegrown industries can be built and nurtured. So we've got models out there. We know what it might take. What we haven't seen is a consistent, steady application of some of these models over time in Africa, and I think that now's the time to start.
Is that a failure of U.S. policy, or is that a failure of governance in Africa?
I would say that the international community has not always been as strategic as it should have been, but ultimately I'm a big believer that Africans are responsible for Africa. I think part of what's hampered advancement in Africa is that for many years we made excuses about corruption or poor governance, that this was somehow the consequence of neocolonialism, or the West has been oppressive, or racism. I'm not a believer in excuses. I'd say I'm probably as knowledgeable about African history as anybody who's occupied my office, and I can give you chapter and verse on why the colonial maps that were drawn helped to spur on conflict, and the terms of trade that were uneven emerging out of colonialism. And yet, the fact is we're in 2009, and the West and the United States has not been responsible for what's happened to Zimbabwe's economy over the last 15 or 20 years. It hasn't been responsible for some of the disastrous policies that we've seen elsewhere in Africa. And I think that it's very important for African leadership to take responsibility and be held accountable. And I think the people of Africa understand that. The problem is that they just haven't always had the opportunities to organize and voice their opinions in ways that create better results.
In the last minute or so of our conversation, even though you are really barely into your presidency, I already feel compelled to ask you a legacy question, and that is, when you finish your presidency, do you expect your stamp on Africa policy to be? What do you think that will be?
What I would like at the end of my term in office to be able to say that the United States was an effective partner with countries throughout Africa in building the kinds of institutions, both political, civil, economic, that allow for improved standards of livings and greater security for the people of Africa, that we've moved them on a trajectory in which they are integrating with the global economy, and that a young person growing up in Johannesburg or Lagos or Nairobi or Djibouti can say to themselves, I can stay here in Africa, I can stay in my country and succeed. And through my success, my country and my people will get stronger. That'd be a good legacy. I don't expect that we're going to get there in 4 years or 8 years, but I think we can get on that path. And the United States is a critical partner in that process.